franchising should explode because more and more people are looking to really build their own business today. It is all about building up the franchisee.
Your first 5 to 10 franchisees will sell your next 100. But as soon as you start to franchise, your role is that of a babysitter, but your entire focus becomes on the success of your children. The software application that we've developed today is a song that I've been writing for 25 years, and I haven't finished it yet.
Well, let's get into the AI, Jeff. You are dying to touch base about AI.
Very few people hunt for information. The majority are fed.
That first franchisee is coming in to buy into what I've accomplished
Your
and
vision,
my
your
background and
success.
my vision.
Don't call me a vendor. I'm a partner in your growth because your growth is my growth.
All right, we have Jeff Dumont joining us today. He's the founder and president or CEO.
Oh.
Both president and CEO of Water Street. Is it Technologies?
Franchise management software.
So the full name is Water Street Franchise Management Software.
Or Water Street FMS.
There you go. I like FMS. Yeah. That's much easier.
Yeah.
Jeff has been in the tech space, I think, forever. He's a good friend of mine, and I'm really excited to have him on the show. So welcome, Jeff.
Adam, thank you for the mug and the early morning coffee. Very much appreciate it.
It is coffee, folks. I swear.
It is. Yeah. No, it's great to be here, Adam. And I've been looking forward to the opportunity to just participate in your podcast. I've been watching them for the better part of a year now. And I love what you're doing. I think it's a great perspective and just a conversation that tends to flow once you get into the conversation. This is unscripted. We don't really have an agenda. We don't really have any predefined viewpoints. We're working together in the same space, that being franchising. And that is my passion and what I look forward to talking about. But I've been in the industry for a little over 25 years. And so I've seen franchising from a lot of different perspectives. And we manage everything from franchise sales to the operations of the franchisor, including royalty management and, compliance for the franchisees. But more importantly, the day-to-day operations of the franchisee. We focus on field service franchise systems. And so, every franchisee, be that an owner-operator or a multi-unit or a master franchise, they all have a different interpretation as to how to grow their business. Truth is, a lot of franchise systems, when they reach a certain maturity, is when they discover their challenges. 10 to 15, 20 franchisees is where they see the deficiencies that they've established over many years of status quo. And so when we work with any brand, the first thing we try to do is understand, where are you coming from? Are you an emerging brand, an early stage? Are you a mature brand with 200 units? What's your objective? And again, because the technology is the easy part. It's understanding the objective of the brand itself and where their pain points are and how to resolve that and how to provide a solution that satisfies that objective. And what's great about our platform, I guess, if I can speak to the platform itself, is that it really is just a bunch of Lego blocks. Mm-hmm. And if I understand what your pain points are and what your requirements are, we can take our application and provide a solution that is very specific to
you
your
were
need.
The only solution that we had in my model. Nothing off the shelf would work for what we needed it to do. And that's how we ended up landing with you, right?
Yeah.
Off the shelf is so much easier if you have, a very simple need. I would say I'm a little early as far as having to build out, a customized system for a franchisor, right? I don't have units even yet. Mm-hmm. And I had to build it from the foundational level. By the way, thank you for your support there and helping me and working with me on that.
That's what I love about what I do. I get to work with entrepreneurs like yourself that have a vision, that are looking for a solution to support that vision. And every new client for Water Street is a new experience. there are no two franchise systems that are the same. I mean, I have 5 clients that are in the same space, all in the junk removal space, but every one of them does something different that makes them unique. And it's not for me to say you're all the same. It's to amplify what is unique about their system and to build that into the platform. And, for the most part, that is how they go about estimating and quoting and how they establish the value proposition behind their brand when they're presenting to the client. It doesn't always come down to the price. Rarely does it come down to how much they charge. But if they can present a unique way of pricing something that distinguishes them from...
Well, bargain pricing is a clear way to the bottom.
Oh, and it's interesting you say that, because the first thing that I try to dispute, it's not about what you charge, it's the value proposition behind the services that you provide. And when you're in a competitive space, the price that you charge can ultimately be
certainly relevant.
It's
right?
relevant.
It's relevant, but it has to be what's above and beyond. People will pay a few dollars more. Even I'm in like the most competitive pricing space possible. I service property management, real estate investors. They don't want to spend a penny. They never want to spend anything, right? They want the cheapest price possible. So I'm very competitive on pricing, but at the same time, I am not the cheapest person in the market. And one of the things I'm very proud of is we were able to actually drive up the cost of bathtub refinishing in Northeast Ohio. My first 4 years in business, we made everybody in the industry more money because we drove up the whole market's prices for apartment communities, because they started to see that I was still growing my business and I was still gaining clients and picking up clients, even though I was more expensive than everybody. I understood margins, which this is why franchisees should buy a franchise a lot of times. You have contractors out there that go into business and they don't understand that you have to have a specific margin or you're never going to grow your business.
Right.
It is not going to grow if you don't have healthy numbers.
Yes.
If you're haggling about price and sacrificing margin, get out of business. Go get a job.
If you're haggling about price, they're typically a one-time client.
Yeah.
If you're looking for the recurring type of opportunities, it's the quality of service where you make their life easier. That they know that they may be paying, a marginal amount more than the cheapest estimate that they were given. They know that they're not going to have to deal with the pain of bad service. And you're making lives easier for those that are, responsible for those that they're responsible for. You never want to build a brand based on being the cheapest in the industry. I mean, 1-800 is a perfect example of that. They're not the cheapest, but they've got brand power because of their recognition. And certainly with some of my clients, they're the bar that they're competing with. And so they're looking, how do they differentiate themselves and still be competitive? And none of our clients really advertise that they're the least expensive in the industry, but they do differentiate themselves by the quality of their service, the simplicity, the pain-free element of delivering that service. Those are the things that people remember. Your brand is everything. And if it means that you have to, eat shit every now and then, it's worth it, because an individual franchisee, via one of their mistakes, can cause irreparable damage to the brand itself. And so one of the things we've always focused on is brand continuity, making sure that your franchisees are operating in a way that protects the brand for the franchisor, that a junk removal company is not all of a sudden washing windows and falling from a ladder and suing the homeowner. You need to protect the brand. You need to empower your franchisees to be successful. And that's the whole concept of templating best practices. That's the biggest truism with any kind of operating system in franchise. It's not about how efficient is your scheduling and how efficient is your CRM and, all of the component parts of a field service application. It's how do you leverage the brand so that your franchisees are successful, protecting the brand, and at the same time, creating that and fostering that parent-child relationship with your franchisees. And I come full circle. If you're an emerging brand, you don't have the history of relationships with your franchisees. And when you get to 10 to 15 franchisees is when you truly learn about the dynamics of how do you empower your franchisees? How do you get them contributing to the growth of your brand? Because they are not just operating their own business anymore. They feel that they're part of a bigger picture. And software unto itself doesn't do that. It's the culture of your brand that encourages
that's
that.
buy-in.
That's buy-in.
When in my interview with John Hewitt, he talked a lot about that, and he was talking about the emotional investment that they have to be successful, right?
Yeah.
Let's step back into how you got started in the industry altogether. Like where'd you grow up, Jeff? We didn't do any personal background, and I know nobody likes talking about themselves.
In the 80s, I go back that far, I was in a punk band or alternative music scene kind of thing. And I think that's where I gained my confidence in being able to do something different. And having the confidence to be, able to take on something that wasn't typically corporate America. I transitioned into the music industry, touring and music production. And part of that involved.
Do you have any hits or anything?
No.
Are we going to find, if I search the internet, can I find a picture of you with the big hair? And
Lollapalooza.
Okay.
I did the Lollapalooza tour as a production manager. And so traveled throughout North America in that event. And, you learn a lot about the road on those types of engagements. You learn a lot about endurance because you work hard, right? And when you're on the stage, it's a different reality when you're back of house and you're making everything work, right? You do all the work, basically. You make sure that the front of house, the band looks good. You rarely see what happens behind the scene, behind the stage, back of stage to make things work. And so I gained a great deal of wisdom in what it takes to make the show go on.
How did you transition from music into computers?
In my role in the music industry, I started to work with early stage computers. I learned the art of putting together those kind of technology platforms with this one client that happened to be a franchise system. I realized this is a really interesting business model. The way that you can connect all of these individual businesses.
So did you do any work outside of franchising prior to moving into the franchise space?
Never.
So you've literally been in the franchise. You told me once before you wrote and you're going to correct me because I'm not a computer programmer. I don't do coding or anything, but you wrote something that's still used in search or something today, right?
One of the first applications that we developed was called the Distributed Information Management System, DIMS for short.
Okay.
And that is still a part of our core application today.
Your core or the whole internet? Because I remember you saying like the way the internet, like it does. Well, I don't understand this stuff, but so when you search or something, like it's a.
I would like to think that I influenced the internet.
Okay.
What we had developed early was the equivalent of today's forums, which is the equivalent of Facebook today. I'm not suggesting that Facebook stole my idea, but the idea of collaboration and having a threaded discussion and being able to organize a discussion into groups and folders and invite people to contribute to that discussion, that's what Facebook is. And
or early chat rooms. Right?
Early chat rooms. All of the social media.
Oh God, am I dating myself too?
That's interesting because
I bet our audience though is probably a little on the older side, so they're gonna remember
relate.
Chat rooms. So
the irony is that technology has advanced so fast that we're not dating ourselves. We're talking 20 years, 10 years, really, for the advent of platforms like Twitter and social media and Facebook.
Yeah, actually, so Facebook, it was MySpace back in, what is that, like very early 2000s, but it's 20 years.
Yeah, that's not old.
No.
That's not old.
It feels like it's been around way longer, right?
So here, the concept of accelerated growth. One of our challenges as a software company is staying current, staying relevant, staying on the cutting edge. We'll talk about AI, of course, the role that AI plays. But when we first started developing a platform for a franchise system, it was built from the ground up. There were no plug and play type applications that you could merge together into a single solution. So we had to build everything that involved.
Is that how they operate today? So a lot of people listening, they're not in tech. So for the most part, they just take written existing functionality and they kind of plug it the way they want it.
Depending on the maturity of the brand, a lot of early stage franchise systems, they've already established existing relationships with a CRM, a scheduling application, an accounting application. They're existing tools that they have in place. And so there's a tendency to want to continue using those tools when they extend their business model into franchising. And it's becoming easier to do that because of, the commonality of APIs.
Honestly, I'm on that side of things, Jeff. I would say that probably is better. No, I'm sorry, it's probably bad for your business, but in most cases, I think that makes more sense for them. Where you come into play in my eyes, right? And this is why you came into play for us, was the customization that you just can't get off the shelf.
Yeah. I wouldn't argue that. My role isn't to dictate what you should be doing. Right? And my role is to understand how you're doing it. And if you're using a GPS tool that works for you, then we'll integrate it. If it is not a great tool, we'll comment on it. If you're using a CRM that you're well entrenched and it's working, then we'll integrate it.
Oh, yeah, and we've done that. Yeah. You and I have done that, and we have multiple other things plugged in.
But the key is having sort of a single source of truth. When you scale your business forward and you have, 30, 40 units, you want to be able to look at the metrics performance across your entire brand. And you need to make sure that there's a common source of truth for all of that data. And one of the great advancements in platforms is whether you're AWS or Microsoft Azure house, you can consolidate data from across all of these different platforms. And that's where the business intelligence comes from. All of your franchisees are going about their day-to-day operations in the same way. And so you have a common metric. And whether it's a single platform or a multi-platform type of solution, you need to have that common point of data so that you can build a KPI that shows performance of sales leads, conversion into jobs, for example. Even though you're not using our platform, you still need that metric. And then you can share that metric in our platform, right? And so there's that whole sharing of knowledge and performance. Franchising is unique in that you have individual business owners that are very competitive. But one of the best things you can present them with is a KPI that shows their performance compared to the rest of the system. And if you don't have that commonality of data, you can't do that. And so it doesn't really matter what system you're using for your CRM or for your, jobs booked or whatever the metric is. You need to have that common metric that's standardized so that you can have a single KPI that creates that competitiveness. Why are they doing better than I? You as the franchisor, they're doing better because they're doing this differently. And you need to try that. So again, the beauty of franchising is you take on a role as the franchisor to encourage the growth of your franchisee. I've often said to an early stage franchise system that you're no longer the baker in the kitchen. You have a successful business, good on you. But as soon as you start to franchise, your role is that of a babysitter. And I don't mean that demeaningly, but your entire focus becomes on the success of your children and no longer celebrating the success of your business, but what can I do now to make sure that my franchisees are successful? And that's the relationship that you need to foster in franchising.
I think you're right. And I think a lot of them, I don't know, but I've talked to quite a few come to the conventions and stuff like this. And some of the franchisors, yeah, they're viewing it as strictly a method to scale their business. I don't view it that. I know. I agree with you that they'll fail.
Yeah.
I don't. Then
the good,
I
the
have
bad,
a different
and the ugly.
motive, and this is why I think I'm going to kill it in the space. Once we get rolling. But I'm going into it, and everybody I've talked to that's successful at it, like really successful at it, it is all about building up the franchisee and solely focused on the franchisee. And if you're not connected and in line with that, and that's not your mission as the franchisor, you're screwed.
Your first 5 to 10 franchisees will sell your next 100.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even, again, they talk about things like being royalty, sufficient and everything, and that stuff's important.
Yeah.
But I don't even care about making money with the first locations, right?
Yeah.
Like, not at all.
Yeah.
Whatever. I will lose. I don't care as long as I can afford it, right?
Yeah.
The idea is that they win. And if they win, then that gets momentum, and then the model continues to grow, and I'll win later. Delayed gratification.
Yeah, no, right? your first 5 to 10 franchisees are your referral network.
Right.
And you have to focus on establishing that success rate with them, because, coming back to the good, the bad, and the ugly, I've seen a number of franchise systems that have grown faster than they're really capable of growing, and it comes back to haunt them at a certain time.
Heard those horror stories too.
And that's tough to recover from, because that is not just an individual business. That's a brand.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, sometimes you're talking 30, 40 franchisees out there that are all suffering because of it.
One of the other interesting areas that we've encountered is with that organization that has 20, 30, 40 entrenched franchise systems is when they want to implement change. They recognize that everything they had done to date to get to the point that they're at is not sufficient to grow to the next phase. And again, it doesn't come down to the technology. And that's one of the great things, one of the challenging things for my business, of course, but one of the great things about technology today is that there's a lot of great tech available, and it tends to become entrenched in a business. And when you need to make change, it's no longer about the technology, it's about change management.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I learned from the music industry is how to understand the motivation of others and how to innocently change their...
You got tips on that? Because that's one of the most challenging things for not just franchises, any business, right? If you manage any level of people, people don't like change. Change, it always has pushback, and there's always challenges with getting people to adopt a new process, new system, new way of looking at things, new anything. Really.
My mantra is that for 10 parts of change, there's one part improvement.
Right.
And if you can highlight how it's going to improve, whether they're bottom line, if they can, have one less staff member in their office, if they can see some kind of benefit that's obvious, they're less reluctant to change. Change sake for change sake alone is banging your head against the wall. And we do a lot of this where we're working with existing brands that are looking of transitioning off a platform that they've implemented that worked fine up until the point now that they're operating as a true franchise, where they're looking for that common metric, where they're looking to manage their royalties, where they're looking to improve efficiency, where they're looking to have a platform for growth, where they can bring on the next franchise and get them up and running in a month. Those are challenges that can be overcome by just implementing a streamlined and operational platform. It takes the vision, though, of the franchisor to accept what's failed, which is now you're getting into
personality pride
and pride and
that's a good way to kill your business, is to be overly prideful and to just not acknowledge.
I don't have a problem with being blunt, maybe to the point of offensive in some cases, but it's not my job.
I like that about you, but
having been in the industry long enough to see the dynamics in play, what is obvious to me is often not considered because of pride and arrogance and, human nature. But I love what I do because I get to work with individuals like yourself that are entrepreneurs by nature, that have a vision, and I like to execute that vision, no matter what stage you're at. Because I've worked with the early stage, I've worked with the mid-tier, I've worked with mature brands that all have their different pain points, but they all are unique. And if you don't understand what the objective is, there's no software that's going to solve that. So, Water Street Franchise Management Software, we're a software company, but there's more of a, I don't want to call it consulting, but there's an awareness of the business model. It's pretty obvious when you're on the outside looking
How do you
in.
handle a situation where you're dealing with a franchisor and what they're essentially asking for isn't the best? Do you give your opinion on it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
When they're, well, let's do it this way,
Yeah.
how adamant do you get on that?
Very adamant. I engage in a meaningful discussion, which may not always be in the best interest of my next client. Today, they may come back a year from now, right? You can't convince somebody that is not willing to entertain a difference of opinion. And that's what I enjoy about this industry, this particular business is, and then coming full circle, don't burn a bridge, because someone that you didn't have a successful conversation with yesterday, they may change role and work for another company where they didn't have the empowerment to make a decision back then, but they saw the wisdom behind it. And you need to play the long game in this industry. And,
it's a small industry.
Oh, it's incredibly small.
I'm saying that, but even though it's incredibly large, right?
Yeah, the economy.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at, we've booked well over 3 million jobs, represent an economy of $500 million through our system, right? I mean, that's significant. But there's only really, less than 5,000 franchise systems. And when you look at our target of field service, that's even smaller.
Oh, I keep going back to the John Hewitt one because he had all these stats.
Yeah.
But that was one of his stats, right? It was the 5,000 something. But then if you break it down to what you have to do to be in the top 1% of those 5,000, and it was seriously like 10 locations or 15 locations or something. So out of those 5,000, that's why I'm saying when I say it's small, right? Out of those 5,000 franchisees, only a handful of them actually have, a good collection of units out there.
Yeah.
Most of them are in my position. They're all emerging and they come and go, and they come into the space and then they drop out. And that's why when we're talking about stuff on what it takes to be successful as a franchisor, there's so many that are going to just rotate through. And I get it because I'm in that boat right now. I'm trying to get those first units out there, and holy crap, is it hard, right?
Why is that? That's one thing I've never really understood.
Getting buy-in. You don't have that culture of franchisees. You don't have the testimonials. I completely understand it, right? There's going to be a lot of skepticism buying into a franchise. When the only thing you can really measure is the success of the founder, essentially myself, right? So that first franchisee is coming in to buy into what I've accomplished and my background and my vision. But I can't give them hard data, right? And especially with the laws, I can't make projections on what they're going to earn or anything like that. Which I would love to. I want to just tell them you're gonna do great. You
chose to dive into probably one of the most complicated franchise models imaginable.
Yes, I certainly. Right? I went way overboard with my development.
So, which is I think brilliant. First of all, the way that you've created a space that you can have individual franchisees operating in the same territory with a specific skill set, multi-brand within a single brand environment. You did everything that would, inspire a seasoned franchisor, because opening a single brand, junk removal company and growing that to where you have your first, second, third, typically they get their brother, they get one of their technicians, they get one of their, someone close to them to join them. And that's how they get their first 5 to 10 franchise ease on board. And that's usually what begins to haunt them 5 to 10 years from now, because they have those.
I'm purposely being cautious on that.
That's a great call.
I could give them away, right?
Yeah.
But that's not going to help
You're
me
going to
long term.
You're going to inherit a lot of problems down the road with that. They don't make the best franchisees long term. And so there's that chasm. How do you get the first 5 franchisees that are going to represent the next 50?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think
especially
it's a magic
mine,
solution,
right? Because I have 4 brands.
Yeah, 4 brands under one.
Yeah, it's not just 5 franchisees. I've got to get a couple in each one, and then I got to prove it as a collective offering. Harry disagrees, our consultant, that it's ideal to push all of them necessarily into a market at the same time, but I believe that's important. And that's because I need the whole model to be functioning in a market that's not mine.
That's right.
So I need to get all 4 of the brands operating within a market so that I can not only prove it, but also find out what's broken and then fix it. So you and I know, because we're going to have to fix all that together on the tech side of things. But yeah, I have to get those operational units in another market operating together, which is the beauty of the model, is them being able to operate as independent business owners, but then have all these advantages of not the franchisors that are really successful. They build this network of franchisees that support each other. And they don't even go to the franchisor. They operate together, right? Their better support is franchisee to franchisee.
Yeah.
And they operate as, that's where the councils and everything come in. That's why I love my model so much. Again, just need to prove it, but I need them operating like that in a market where they have, let's say Columbus, Ohio, right? All 4 of them are operating in there, and they're working together to share clientele because they're different offerings and offer that turnkey solution back, but they get to grow their business as a unit.
They're not competing against each other.
No.
They're in the same market, but they're supporting each other, because if I do this one service, I can recommend your service.
Right.
What I love about your business model is you still have that regional representation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You still have that entity that can support all 4 franchisees in one particular market, but they have someone to talk to that represents that market. You have I wouldn't say an entirely unique, but a really, really well-structured business model for franchising. Case study, honestly. 10 years from now, when we do another podcast, we'll look back.
I hope to come back and say, hey, we have...
It worked.
Well, if it's 10 years for pro forma, I don't know if I'm legally allowed to put numbers on. I might have checked this, but, we're looking at 500 units in 5 years. Or no, it was 380 units or something like that in 5 years. So 10 years from now, we'd be a couple thousand, right?
One of the things I always say to a prospective client of Water Street is that don't call me a vendor. I'm a partner in your growth, because your growth is my growth. Just, simply by how we structure our licensing fees. And it's in my best interest that you're successful. And so don't consider me a vendor. This is a partner in your growth. And we'll do what we have to support that. And again, that, we provide the technology part of it, but we also make sure that the technology fits your business and the vision. And that's what I love, again, about what I get to do. I think there are, unfortunately, I got to be careful about this. I feel fortunate that I get to do what I want to do. And I get to work with a dynamic set of individuals, and everyone is different. And some are open to change and other ones are reluctant to it.
I remember last time you and I had dinner, when you came out to visit in Cleveland, and we started talking about you'd been approached a couple times to sell, and we don't have to go into details on any of this stuff, but you're like, what would I do?
I love what I do.
Yeah.
I love what I do. It's true. We're at the IFA show here in Phoenix, and I've been a member of the IFA for probably going on 20 years. And I honestly don't come to the show specifically to generate new business. It's a great network environment, but I've made so many good friends and acquaintances in this industry. And that's the other cool thing about franchising. It is a small community, and you get to know people and you establish relationships with people. I'm working on an opportunity right now with an individual that I met 10 years ago that has now retired, but helping out a new brand. And the first thing he did was called me and said, what you did for us 10 years ago worked, and we love it. And, you're the first person I called. That's the reward of doing a good job of working with people and understanding their vision. It sucks when we don't win every opportunity, but the reward of winning those that we do just validates everything that I do. And I like to move beyond the day-to-day business of my clients and get to know who they are. It's great working with the franchisor. And as the businesses grow, we have a number of clients that are, large-scale franchise systems where you kind of lose touch with the individuality of the people that and they become more system-wide. But you still have those nuggets of truth within them that you hold on to. And those are the ones that are first to bypass your front line of support, and they go directly to you, right? Because, they know that they can do that. And,
Yep.
I've got my phone turned off now. Right, but
I don't bother you on your phone.
No, you don't, actually. We have other means of communication.
I think I have called you for work purposes, personal purposes, like meeting up in town and shit, but once, and we had a crash.
Yeah.
So that one obviously had to be resolved.
And those still go directly to me.
Right.
That's the truth. But no regrets. It's been, looking back over the many years of working in this industry, I couldn't see myself doing anything else. Technology, on the other hand, is a constant.
Well, let's get into the AI, Jeff. You are dying to touch base about AI. So for the audience, we actually had an entire podcast before I hit record. We've talked philosophy, we've talked politics, and all these taboo subjects that we can't go into, but we can talk about AI. So everybody's integrating.
What? I come back to saying just the extent that technology has advanced in 20 years. And I truly believe that technology is advancing faster than our ability to comprehend what the technology is. And AI is a game changer. Absolutely. I don't know what that means.
Again, to clarify, what's AI, right? Like,
it's it's
not artificial
GPT.
intelligence. So it's computer learning.
I love the label.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence, to me, is an oxymoron to itself. It's immediately adopted as a marketing strategy, first and foremost. The functionality of it to be determined. Artificial intelligence right now is being useful in streamlining maintenance-heavy intellectual tasks, but not physical tasks in your industry, right? Which, AI is not going to clean a carpet for you.
Not yet.
Not yet, right? It's not going to resurface a counter.
You give us 5-10 years.
Yeah. So you may be able to do 3 of those for the cost of one. But we're years away from being able to. There's a scale of economy. First of all, introducing any kind of robotic into a system is incredibly
expensive. Are you following
expensive.
Musk's advance? Or
well,
he only had 2 years there, a year in, 1 or 2 years in, and
he's a conundrum.
Dude, he has the experience to mass produce.
Yep.
It's incredible what he's done with those robots in such a short time frame.
Yeah.
I mean, they're handling eggs, and the hands was the most important,
the sense.
impressive
thing
I've seen.
I don't underestimate the advancement of robotic, and so to me, that's not intellectual advancement. That's physical motorism, mechanics, and
but you tie it in with
interpretation,
computer learning,
interpretation. Yeah, and touching the egg and how much of a grip do you put on it?
And that's what he's
break
intending to do. He's talked about it. He essentially wants us so that you can teach the robot to do.
Did he implant a chip in his brain?
I don't know.
I read that. And I wouldn't put it past him.
I wouldn't put it past it. So maybe he is AI, dude.
And so
Maybe
he's not real.
Maybe
He's not real.
maybe the chip took over. So they put the chip in, and then the AI became self-aware and took over his brain. So maybe Musk is no longer Musk.
Now we go into the conspiracy.
Yeah, now we're going down a whole new rabbit hole.
AI is a game changer, and it's being adopted right now in streamlining monotonous tasks. And I think it's very relevant in managing a sales pipeline, perhaps. But from an advancement in physically getting things done, it's still, I was going to say years away, but that, again, an accelerated curve, for car manufacturing, absolutely, right? But for walking into a room that you've never seen before and being able to say, this is what it's going to take to do this job, that's intelligence, absolutely. That can be processed.
No, Jeff, see, I disagree with you. I think all of that can be programmed. So they already have, here, I had an idea for an app.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't even really using AI. It's just using algorithms they have software that can already scan things.
Right.
So I had an idea for an app for my turns.
Mm-hmm.
So an apartment manager could walk in, scan the room, and then there'd have to be a lot of data pre-programmed, but it could identify a hole in the wall. It could identify things that needed to be done, right? Throughout the unit, highlight those things and then submit the order, so it could check the condition of the paint to see if we needed to do a double coat and that type of stuff. So that could all be done. I don't have the resources to build that at the moment, but that could easily be done today with the technology that already exists. And if you combine that with a computer learning program and you get all that data into it, it could walk into a place and make an assessment, like in the space I'm in, to paint an apartment. It could do that. It could walk in and make an assessment and a judgment.
But this is a niche-oriented solution that would require a massive investment in order to program the...
But why wouldn't a company make that?
Well, because it's
if
niche.
I was in a different position, so I'm up, say it is 10 years from now, right? And I have those 2,000 units, and we can, even if I don't have all the capital, I can raise what I need to do this. Yeah. Why the hell wouldn't I?
Well, again, because it's niche oriented.
Well, it's not though.
I mean,
because
going inside of a vacant...
Not if we develop a way to streamline the education of the robot, right? And
if there's overlap, if it satisfies the purpose of multiple scenarios, that not just...
Which goes back to what Musk is trying to do with the robots. He's trying to get it to where you could just teach them this stuff, like you teach a person. So it would go through your training. Imagine you had an AI.
That's a quantum step forward.
Right.
Artificial intelligence.
So think about like the LMS, right? My LMS for Refresh.
Yeah.
And we could take this robot, plug it into the LMS. It'll take them 5 minutes to go through all the courses.
Yeah. And compose a script.
Yep.
Yep.
And now, now it spits back. It's been trained on every single procedure in the company. Plus we could just download the manual into it, right? And now it has all the information relevant to it to do the job. And then it's just some human engagement with it for a couple of weeks, just like an employee, right? This is a training period.
Yeah. That's knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
That's knowledge. And I do think that AI is already capable of streamlining content, right? That's one of the immediate benefits of AI. It hasn't transformed yet into the physical realm of field service, in my opinion. And I'm not saying it won't replace a physical body from doing, looking in a vacant suite and saying this is what it's going to take to turn this over. But I still think we're years away from having that type of automation.
Again, I'm going to still challenge you, man. You go to YouTube, and they have these robots now that they use in like hospitals and stuff. Yeah. That'll clean the bathroom, and it does like repetitive. So it's like a giant Roomba.
Yeah.
But it'll spray down the bathroom. They have one that it only does a certain part of the process, but for new construction, it can mud and tape all the drywall in a unit.
Mhm.
So they come in, they hang the drywall. This thing comes in and they leave it overnight and it does all the finishing work.
Yeah, I was watching a video last night on automation on drywall, coincidentally, where this machine was able to, tape
Mhm.
and mud and sand after the drywall was put up. And that's a good example
The big
of
boxy
new
looking
construction.
one, right? Yeah.
Right. So I'm not saying it's not going to happen. Where AI has already addressed its potential in content management and streamlining some of the sales process, its role in replacing a physical worker in a dynamic environment, which is characteristic of field service. I don't know how fast. I'm not saying it's not going to happen.
Sure.
I just don't know when. There's companies out there like CompanyCam, right? That a great advancement in the use of a phone in measuring.
Mhm.
But now that, they can look at a stack of lumber and calculate the volume of it automatically. That's an example of AI, if you want to call it that, in situ. That's, pretty incredibly productive. But I also have this inherent fear of dependency on AI and becoming too complacent with the dependency on artificial interpretation. Right? It's not just intelligence, it's
So-
interpretation.
I've wondered some of that too, right? Like we're all switching over from using browsers and search history to come up with our conclusions. Instead, we go to, ChatGPT, right? This is becoming more and more
Yeah.
common. And ChatGPT is actually, I heard they're going to get into doing browsing, compete with Google, but they're dependent on it. Here's the answer. And so who controls the answer? Really, the more people that start adopting, and that's how they find their information, is just by asking,
Just an algorithm.
a prompt. And that could be kind of scary. Whoever controls what those prompts are, what prompts AI is not allowed to give them, they control the flow of information and education. And
From a business perspective, from, the fact that I own a software company, I don't personally have a need to adopt AI into the platform too early in the game.
so that surprised me when you mentioned that before we started recording too, because I do see value in it. I use it like here, even my video editor. I have somebody that's doing most of my editing now, but I played around with it the other night, and it was a crappy video, but I was actually able to, through prompt,
Mhm.
create an entire video with voiceover and visuals and even background music, just giving it a prompt and telling it to use stock footage.
Yeah.
And
Content.
yeah. And
So AI for content development, like we're launching a new product, right?
but there's more than content. So what I was going with that is like that you see it now on all the platforms. Even LinkedIn has the, rewrite with AI option. I just noticed that actually, I think last night.
Mhm.
But they're starting to do that on there. I think that's pretty convenient stuff.
Yeah.
So then again, I don't know where it would play a role in your software. So more of the operational type software. I see it for the content. I see it for drafting an email or.
So one of the strong points of our application is intelligent scheduling,
Mhm.
right? And I see AI potentially helping in route optimization,
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
right? So, but that's, route optimization right now is based on proximity, duration, traffic, right? So the only way that AI could improve that is to be more real time. That's, AI is not going to help you improve.
I disagree, but that's because my shit's so complicated, right? Everything
Yeah.
I do is so complicated.
True enough. Because in your case, you have 4 franchisees
Mhm.
that need to, when you're doing a turn,
That was one of the reasons
They
we
need to
hired
have
you
a
was
sequence.
exactly this, was outlining the schedule for them to go into the same client, same apartment, and time their services. And so like making changes on the fly,
yeah.
it's more than just time and duration. It's actually going to have to identify parameters with the individuals performing the work. Yeah.
So And again, the way that you currently do that, right, is if the
Very
first person
manual.
to show up on site realizes that the scope of work has changed, right, that the next trade that was supposed to show up is now delayed. And that all has to be managed manually.
Yeah, we have that manual input. That's what I'm saying. That's where AI could help, is it could fill those manual voids in between where I currently, like you and I, we did a great job putting together a system for this. But it has to involve humans in the equation. And every time there's a human potential for error.
So I guess it comes down to the net benefit that you gain from introducing or incorporating AI into your business process. And that's where I don't see an immediate benefit in your industry, and certainly the industry that we're focused on with AI. It's a great example. When your first trade shows up on site and something's changed, that needs to be communicated across the entire platform. And right now, with your one operation locating, when you build that times 10, you have to look at the benefit of introducing AI with scale.
Mm-hmm.
And when does it become relevant? Because I guarantee you that when you introduce any new technology, there's pain. And, is it the right time to introduce? It's a good discussion in the role of technology. And there are enough applications in the market today that it's not whether or not the technology will work. You have to choose the right package, of course. It's no longer a technology, will it work question. It's how do I implement it? How do I train? How do I use it so that it doesn't create more pain than the value itself?
So again, let me ask you a question. Like things like a job description in the system, and now I'm just challenging you, adding it in there. Stuff like what I mentioned earlier with the LinkedIn rewrite, right? Then again, now we're just brainstorming, so I'm thinking out loud. But yeah, I could see a place for that where you could work it in to help clarify or write out information like scope of work or things like that.
And again, that's content. And yes, I do think that AI can streamline the content. Quite literally, when you're working on site on a mobile phone, the last thing you want to have to do is type anything in.
Oh, voice text, yeah.
Right. So voice text and the manipulation of the voice text into some kind of meaningful job description could be a great example of how AI can benefit that. And that already exists. That's the beauty of not having to invest in creating a technology to supplement, to replace sort of a
Siri.
Yeah.
Siri sucks for that, though.
Yeah. As an Android user, I can't comment.
I don't think Android's going to be any better. I'm an Apple fanatic. But actually, I'm not a fanatic. I'm just stuck in the ecosystem forever now.
AI is a new technology that I don't think business owners fully understand, and they're more inclined to adopt it because it's something new and has great potential. But I would caution about implementing any kind of solution based on AI other than what is available on the market and readily accessible and incorporated into your technology stack. And again, coming full circle, a week after ChatGPT became available to the public domain, every company out there was saying how they're using AI to benefit. And it's really a marketing strategy as much as
everybody used it in marketing. You could 100% tell, though. Like, I just posted something on LinkedIn telling the freaking people that are sending me all these emails, guys, at least change the first sentence. It's the same first sentence in everybody's email.
So saturation, right, is a big concern that I have. Business to business and business to consumer use not just social media, but, campaigns. And it's lost its focus where it's just white noise now. And so any kind of meaningful communication that's important gets lost amongst the white noise. So maybe AI can play a role in filtering out the noise from what's really important to me.
So we're going to use AI to filter itself out.
Yeah. It's Matterhorn,
Yeah.
right? Anti-AI. I don't know. I mean, I'm still trying to understand the functional role of AI. To me, it's just a great term, a great potential technology, but I don't see it changing your business in the next 5 years. If you're looking at a 5-year window,
I don't see it really impacting most other businesses. Again, I see a lot of benefits in marketing for
yeah,
it. But I also think there's some stuff that really needs to be improved there, and or the people using it need better training on how to properly prompt and how to actually review and edit
it's a whole
the
new skill
result.
set. It's a whole
Yeah.
new skill set on how to prompt an AI. I think one of the bigger challenges that businesses are going to face starting at the end of this month is changes in the Google platform and cookies, and how they're changing the entire dependency on cookies for targeting and recurring targets of people that have expressed interest.
Mm.
That's a game changer that has been known for probably over a year. It's going to happen, but it's been ignored by a lot of the strategies that businesses have for using their position on Google, their ranking, and just how they show up on a person's browser based on
So
cookies. That's going out.
I'm not a marketing expert. From my understanding, though, it's just the crawlers are getting more accurate, right?
They're doing away with. They're doing away
not
with
crawling the site.
not crawling, but what they crawl are cookies. That little stamp that you have in your browser. Right, and they crawl it and they recognize it and they anchor it and then they see it again and again and again. And that's why when you go onto LinkedIn, the first
so
ad
maybe
that
I'm
appears.
misunderstanding how those work. The cookies, it attaches to your IP when you visit something.
Physical browser.
Yeah,
matter.
yeah, your browser, but
Yeah.
it attaches to that, telling that you visited X site,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. So for targeting for ads, again, I think they're probably basing it on. I'm guessing here, but with AI, right, and everything, I'd imagine what they're doing is building profiles on it, on the individual.
Yes.
And so they're going to know likes and dislikes and everything and make recommendations based on which is scary as fuck.
Yeah. They're going to feed you.
Yeah. They're going to give you what they think you should be eating.
Yeah.
Right? And they're going to base it on your psycho profile or.
They have so much
but I don't see
information.
that being a problem for businesses. I see it as a human rights problem, maybe, but as far as for businesses, for advertising, it's still in Google's best interest to get your stuff in front of the buyer.
Yeah, I don't fully understand why Google is doing this, to be honest. Why they are taking away one of the strongest
control
anchor
buying
points.
trends.
Well, and why is Apple transitioning to the the new adapter, right? It's
Well, that was Europe. You can thank Europe.
It's pressure
for that.
from outside.
Yeah,
that's making them change. And I get sick of every time I go on Flipboard to read news, right? And when I was first introduced to it, it was great. It was a great source of news that I could flip through and read what I wanted to feed my brain with. But more and more so, it's now asking me to subscribe and pay, and so it's already a negative in that sense of freedom of information. But increasingly so, it's like accept these cookies, reject these cookies. The process of rejecting is to the point where I just accept because I don't have the patience when I'm in the middle of reading something. So it's human behavior, and I think it's ultimately the pressure from the end users collectively, whether it be the European Union or the U.S. or Canada. It's pressure from outside that is forcing these companies to change their behavior because they don't want to change. They have to adapt to the end user experience. And, bringing this full circle again, incorporating new technology into a software solution, you have to be really careful of change, because, we have a method of providing our services and our solution. And even though it's tailored to your individual business, the nuances of it, introducing change in a brand is exponentially more complicated than an individual business owner that wants to introduce a new software package.
Sure.
You're changing the behavior of the way that your franchisees operate day to day. And you had mentioned, the idea of the franchise councils. They're incredibly important to a brand at a certain point of maturity, where you're getting the representation of your franchisees through a few half dozen individuals that represent the voice of the franchisees, presenting it to the franchisor. That's an inevitable part of the relationship of growth and franchising. And they're incredible. And to be honest, some of my favorite sit-ins have been with the ad councils, the advisory councils, because again, you learn what's happening at the ground level than necessarily at the top level. You can gain a lot of insight into that. But introducing change into any system has to be really, really measured against the benefit. And I'm not, and never have been, the first to adopt change. I tend to be a bit more conservative, maybe to a fault, of introducing change. And it's not just relying on what works, keep it.
I can't resonate with that at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You got to change things.
You do. Oh, absolutely. You have to grow.
Yeah.
And I mean, to a fault, my company fell behind in a certain period of change. 10 years ago, well, when we started this company, there were really only 3 players in the franchise community, one of which tried to sue me and take me out.
Well, you got dozens now. Almost every single service management platform now has a franchise branch to it.
Yeah.
I looked at a lot of them, by the way. They don't understand franchising well enough yet. Yeah. They're going to, you're going to have a lot more competition.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
You look at the market opportunity where you sell it once to the franchisor and your revenues are based on.
Not to mention, franchising, assuming the government doesn't completely screw it up, franchising should explode because more and more people are looking to really build their own business today.
Having been in the industry
the gig
long
economy,
enough, I've seen cycles. 2008. The irony of franchising is that it tends to do better in a downturn, because when someone is laid off, the last thing they want to do is just find another job that doesn't give them that long-term security. So they think, I just want to run my own business.
Yeah, it's not even just the economy. I think there's a different viewpoint when we start looking at Gen Z, right? When they start coming up, most of them don't want to go into corporate America in any way, shape, or form, right? They all think they're going to make it as influencers. I shouldn't generalize like that, but the reality is there's only going to be a few that'll do well with the remote jobs and all the cushy stuff that I can go make $1 million online. Yes, you can make money online, but it's not as simple as you think it is. And there's only limited ways to do this and, positions for you to do that in. But you're going to have some that end up coming this direction. And
one of the,
which, by the way, means that franchisors need to look at bar to entry.
Yeah.
Which is something I'm really trying to figure out and solve for, is getting my bar to entry much lower so that low-cost franchises are going to do really, really well.
Yeah, point of entry. All right. Yeah. Although, we can bundle everything together under the franchise model, getting rid of brick and mortar and, just focusing on field service. There's so many different business models within that realm where they're an owner-operator. Right? If you're looking for an owner-operator, it's a low cost of entry, typically a simple business model where, you've jumped right into multi-unit in a sense, or master franchise type. So you're looking for a much more sophisticated business development person rather than someone that just wants a steady income, doing their own job. So you're dealing with different personality types. And that's the first thing that I usually ask when being introduced to a new franchise system is, what's your business model?
To your point, and you and I have had this conversation, and I might do both. There might be a pathway for both, right?
You've got the structure in place already. It's whether, how you choose to.
It's a difference in support.
Yeah.
That's the
And
biggest
ownership.
complication with it is you're going to have a higher failure rate, I think, with unit operators, or at least a stagnation level, where they don't go anywhere.
I
Which impacts numbers. So, but ways you could split that off is calling it a different type of territory.
The biggest risk for any emerging brand is trying to grow too fast.
Yeah.
By choosing the wrong business partners. You know, the reason they want to franchise is because they think it's a fast track to growth. And that's
newsflash, everybody out there, it is not. There is a lot that goes into, well, maybe I'm biased or I have a skewed point of view on this because, like you did say, my model is really complicated.
Mm-hmm.
So my R&D was probably 30 times more involved than most franchisors.
For startup.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the inevitable costs of setting up a franchise.
I did it 4 times.
Yeah. And then you did it times 4 because you have 4 distinct franchise agreements, but it's not something that you did wrong.
Time will tell.
In retrospect, yes.
Yeah.
Right. You may find that you could have done things differently.
Mm.
But that's again.
I question decisions now, but again, you can't look backwards.
No. And I still think that you have a very, I wouldn't say unique business model, but to start out in this model without having gone through the iteration.
Normally, they do it through acquisition.
That's another. That's
what the platform brands are. They go out there, they find an existing business, and then they franchise it. But they're normally either private equity backed or
a quick turn.
Yeah, it's institutional investors. Normally that are doing the platform systems.
We're working with a brand right now that is a spinoff of another brand that had a very negative experience with the franchisor. We talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly type thing, and the accelerated growth intent of this one brand poisoned and they're what really challenged me in this particular case was they're veteran focused. And you're seeing a lot more of, brands that are going after veterans.
I'm targeting veterans. I think they would make fantastic franchisees.
They are the, characterized for what you will, but they're hard workers. They're disciplined. They take instruction well. All of the attributes of a franchisee, they fit the mold. But this one brand abused that structure and it doesn't get spoken of. It's not really public knowledge until you stumble across it. And the storyline is just terrible. And it just makes me want to support this new company, this new brand.
I'm curious how they take advantage of that.
Turnover. Basically, they force the existing franchisees. They promise more than they can deliver.
Oh, they get them buy-in. So they're really taking franchise fees.
They flip the same location multiple times because the goal is...
I think you told me about this one, actually, when you were out for dinner. Yeah, that was horrible.
Yeah, and,
So long and short of it, they're essentially getting them in. They're expecting them to fail. They're getting the buy-in, and they're getting them to invest. They're making money on the investment plus the franchise fee and everything.
Yeah.
And then they're pushing them out. And so
the same territory again.
They're taking advantage of veterans. Yeah, that's horrible.
And the trust.
Yeah.
And the honesty and all that goes with just, what I believe in franchising should be. The community again, right? The open conversation that you can have. And, the irony is that this one brand was initially a brand of Water Street that dropped us unceremoniously. And again, I kind of look back and say, good. Yeah, good. Because I would not want to be a part of that. So never burn a bridge. You may not always disagree or may not always agree. But it is a very tight community of entrepreneurs that, the other thing that I've seen in the industry is consolidation. You can work your ass off building a brand and providing a technology platform that the franchisees love and they get bought. And you're seeing more and more of that. And part of that I think was driven by the reality of the COVID experience and just, it was an opportunity to buy low on certain brands.
So I'm newer in the space, but yeah, platforms are definitely becoming more of a thing. But then again, I guess I don't have anything to compare it to, so I didn't know if that was the norm. But it seems to be there's one parent company that owns, and a lot of people don't even realize this, that the average consumer out there, they are getting consolidated into groups.
You're seeing that more and more. I mean, Neighborly is a great example.
Neighborly is the biggest example when it comes to services.
But there's quite a few parent brands that own 4 or 5 other brands, and you're seeing that consolidation. And that's often the incentive or the direction of the franchisors to build a brand big enough so they can sell it, which is great. I mean, that's just a good business.
General vision, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. I honestly, I'm kind of just neutral on it. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing for the country, for small business, for the owners, the franchisees or not. There's benefits of bigger companies, more capital, more support and things, but then they're also sluggish and slower, to
they're
adapt
VC.
and change. Yeah.
They're VCs. Their interest is not that of the original vision.
I'm a capitalist at heart all the way. We talked about that, right? And so I love the profit motive, but at the same time, they won't sacrifice for future growth, right? Like
they have a different objective.
Yeah.
Very different objective. And it is what it is. It's I've witnessed and been part of a number of acquisitions with brands, including some that are with Neighborly and such. And you often see some of the franchisees exiting at a point because of change, and neither that it's good or bad. It's just their opportunity to exit, right? So, taking advantage of the opportunity that's presented itself. I don't think there's been any negative transitions as a result of consolidation in the industry that I've witnessed, but you see a lot of it.
Well, I interviewed Tom Kraus with Donato's, and they were bought up by McDonald's for a while. McDonald's kind of screwed things up a little bit with the company, and the family ended up buying it back.
Yeah.
So they saved it themselves, but that was an interesting story to hear in and of itself. The founder coming back and buying the whole company back.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. And they're still family owned now.
Yeah.
So I guess it's going the other way sometimes too.
Well, because it doesn't satisfy any of the parties' expectations.
Right.
And that's the nature of consolidation. It's inevitable. And there's a certain point where you get tired as a franchisor, and it's an opportunity to exit yourself. And that's one of the best and only vehicles to pursue an exit strategy. So, consolidation in the industry has changed the nature of franchising, the independence of franchising. But that's business. That's inevitable, and you just have to observe and adapt. We've lost some premier clients, not because of anything other than just consolidation.
Well, sure, you got to go under whatever they're using.
Whatever they're using, yeah. And that's just the reality of doing business. So, we've witnessed that. Some of my favorite franchise brands right now just have a passion about their brand that, you lose when it becomes part of a larger organization. And that's inevitable. But, you kind of stand back and just kind of watch it happen, and you see what's happening. And you always get that call kind of thing, well, here's what's happening, right? And they don't have to go any further than that.
You lose the founder mindset, right?
You do.
I love systems and processes and everything too, but managers, middle management in corporate America, generally, no offense, guys, but you're normally not all that creative.
No, because the founder was.
Yeah.
Right. So we come full circle. I'm the founder. Along
How
with
do you
my
hold
business
the
partner.
vision, right?
How do you execute the vision? How do you maintain the vision? How do you adapt? How do you always invent? There's always challenges. There's always things that are going to keep you up at night as a founder, as a business owner. But I don't know what I'd do differently. to be honest. If I was to sell tomorrow, I don't know what I would do.
I don't think you could sell tomorrow.
No.
I don't see you doing anything else, Jeff.
I'll go back full circle and play in a band.
Yeah, you'll go start another business.
Yes.
You'll do something.
They don't like my kind of music anymore, though, right? So I can't play that anymore.
Oh, okay, we can get in. What do you mean? Are you kidding me? Everything's retro today.
Yeah, it's true enough. Maybe it has come full circle.
You look at a lot of the beats and stuff in modern music, and then there's actually a TikToker that does this. I think it's the father-son, and the son comes in, and he's like, check this out, and he puts on the music, and the dad's like, hold on. He pauses that, and then he shows that the original beat is, like 30 years prior. So.
Yeah. So maybe we have come full circle.
Yeah, dude.
Well, I took music. I've often said that the software application that we've developed today is a song that I've been writing for 25 years, and I haven't finished it yet. Because, literally this morning, one of my clients sent a text saying, this really bugs me. Is there any way you can do this type of thing? And it was a small minor improvement that just, totally we had never experienced.
Yeah.
Right. And it was kind of like one of those.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Yeah. And not only is it something that we can do for you, but it's a general enhancement. And that's how the software has developed over the many years. It's just working with business owners. And what are your needs? How can we improve it? Again, being cognizant of change, because we change it here and it's going to impact a lot of other people. You have to really control that experience, but it never ends. It's not like you've invented the perfect piece. You've never written the finished song. It's something that continues to evolve.
I would die if I retired. I might sell the business at some point, but
you'd have to do something else.
I'll just move into another business.
Yeah. That's your passion.
Yeah. I wouldn't know what to do with myself, honestly. Yeah. I mean, I enjoy to travel, but you can only travel so much, and you only do it for little stints, right?
It would be nice for a bit.
Yeah.
It would be nice to be able to do it whenever you want. But I couldn't see. I can't.
I mean, I don't let it stop me. I drove here.
Yeah.
Right.
And the entire
screw it.
the entire time you're driving here, you're thinking about your business. In the background.
Partially. So I love the open road, and my time on the open road is you put on a little bit of background music, and it's not just business mostly, but it's not just business. It's a lot of daydreaming. Where we're going to go here. So a lot of it's problem solving, again, I had 4 days driving here. So it's a lot of time to reflect and think about things. So a portion of it's focused on problem solving in the business, next actions, next steps, things like that. But then other parts of it is literally just getting yourself psyched up and thinking about the future and what you want and reflecting on life. And
I do find it a bit of a roller coaster of emotion, that in one moment you're crisis management, and then when you solve that crisis, it's elation. And it's this continual loop of the reality of meeting other people's expectations, right? Which is what I do.
That's what any CEO does that.
Yeah.
So we talked about the founder hat. That's a different hat than the CEO hat. I'm still developing. I'm a pretty good founder. I'm still developing myself to be a good CEO.
Well,
that's probably an ongoing battle for a long time, right?
That's the chasm.
Yeah.
Between the vision and the role of a CEO. And they're not mutually exclusive by any means.
No.
But they're not always complementary.
Well, they're definitely not always complementary. Because the founder hat, the founder side of your personality wants to pull you into that creative, into building out the new process, into taking this new risk, into doing this, right? And then the CEO side of you is like, hold on. No. We got to reserve that creative outlet for a second. You got to finish what you're working on over here before you go over here. And maybe we don't risk that right now. So they fight, right?
We need to.
It's the left and right side of your brain just battling each other.
We need to surround ourselves with good people.
Yeah.
From my perspective, I have a business partner, which is always the voice of reason, which is so important because I am anything but. I like to I like to develop. I'm not a developer. I'm not a coder. In fact, my team gets pissed off at me when I touch the code because I'm a visionary and I know how to make something look like the way I want it to look, but I end up breaking something in the process that they have to clean up. Whereas my business partner is the voice of reason, right? And so surround yourself with the right people that you can work with, whether it's your employees, your partners, because on one hand, as the CEO, I have to execute the vision, but as the founder, I still have this vision as to what I enjoy doing. And they're not mutually exclusive. They're not always complementary, but if you have the right people around you, you can navigate that more effectively. And so I have a very close team of developers that have been working with me for the better part of 15 plus years.
Shout out, Mike.
Shout out, yeah. And
Mike's our rep. Love him. Or our primary developer.
You also have to be cognizant that they're not always going to be there. So the CEO in me is saying, scalability, what happens if, but the founder in me is going, Mike, can we do this? And that's the beauty of the day in the life of.
Well, I loved our early calls when we were, doing foundational stuff. That was a lot of fun doing the development. At the same time, I got frustrated too, because, it's very tedious. Your job is so tedious. I'm like, and I have to explain it to you, right? So that's been the hardest part about development or the franchise in general, is this is stuff you can't farm out. It has to come out of my head onto the paper, and I can't just solve this for me on, a lot of this stuff, like the ops manual, for example, right? That was grueling too. We did that at the height of COVID. And so we had to do it on Zooms, and it was months, literally, because I had to write 4 operating manuals, and it was months on Zooms with Michelle. Shout out to Michelle. Months on there, though, of her just drilling questions at me, and I'm rotating some of the staff in and out of these meetings, but it's like 2-hour long sessions on Zoom of, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do you do this? Then that section's created, and then I got to review it, and the times 4 again, right? So,
and you realize that you've always been able to do everything just because you know how to do it,
right?
But when you translate it,
when you document it,
it's like, not only is it monotonous, but it's a brain dump that's painful, and that's again where AI, comes in big time.
You were talking about content. I'm trying to figure out how I can use it because we're still working on the LMS, so which is the same process as the manuals, except more involved because you actually have to create content to go with it now. So you got to make a video, you got to or a test or
once you start to systemize your business, you realize just how much you've done ad hoc over the many years of just, and it inside and out, but to translate it to be able to give to somebody else to do it. And that's the birth of franchising, of a franchise brand. And again, it's those first 5 franchisees that are going to fine tune the learning curve.
If I could give one piece of advice to a founder, aside from general business advice, but one thing that they should do from day one, and which I will do if I ever start another business, I don't think I'll ever start anything from scratch again. But now knowing what I know, I would probably just go out and acquire something and
build it,
get it to where I want it. But my advice would be to have the first system you need to develop if you're going to start your own business from scratch is how to develop process, or how to record your processes. So your first process is the process of recording process.
Yeah.
If you do that and you do it from day one, your life will be so much easier.
I call it templating best practice.
Yeah.
If you can define what your best practice is and you can template it, then you can replicate it. And that's where our systems come in, is, we take a bunch of Lego blocks and we assemble a template based on your best practices so that you can hand that off to somebody that's never engaged in your particular vertical, and they can learn it quickly and they can follow a system. And, coming full circle into the challenge of speaking to people and questioning them, they themselves realize how little they know as to what their best practices are. because it's just worked. And they've gone through the nuances of something's working.
This is just how we do it.
This is just how, well, and it takes us a week. If we do a core implementation of our software, we can have you up and running in a week.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take you a month, 2 months, 3 months, a year to actually define what the system is based on your best practices, because you've never had to really do that before. And this is talking about the emerging brands.
We went through that together, dude.
Yeah.
You and I built out entire processes in there that are gone now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And we had, it's like, okay, we need to do X, Y, Z. Wait, that didn't work.
Yeah. It's painful.
Yeah.
It's very time consuming, but you got to get it right before you start to scale your business. And I guess, if we were to look at how Water Street differentiates itself from all of the competition in the sector, it's the time that we take to get to understand your business.
It's Mr. Jeff Dumont.
Well, that's, yeah. I got to learn how to replicate that myself.
Well, good luck.
Yeah.
When you figure it out, let me know.
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
I made that mistake early on too.
Yeah.
Trying to fill my shoes too early.
Yeah. That's the founder's pain of growth.
Luckily, I have a great support staff,
Yeah.
so my team handles most of the day to day.
Yeah, and what I've noticed, working with you and your team, is they're pretty clear on what works and what doesn't work. Makes it very easy to address a deficiency in the system because they're on the front end of it. They're on the front line of it. And, whether you're on the call center side of it, this is the other thing that I think a lot of franchise, the field service,
Mm-hmm.
certainly the owner-operator type model, they really need to endorse the idea of a centralized system for billing, invoicing, customer relations. In an owner-operator model, the franchisees typically underneath the sink fixing something. They don't have time to take the phone out. If they do, it's a bad customer experience.
I think there would be two things you want to look at before you make that decision. One would be the type of franchisee you have. So this goes back to if you're talking owner-operator.
Mm-hmm.
So what you were alluding to earlier, where it's, the guy on the van,
Mm-hmm.
for sure, I could see that it makes perfect sense for you to have central billing or serve,
Mm-hmm.
field their phone calls, cover it, add in the 1% royalty rate it's going to cost for you to run that and make their life a little bit easier. The other side to that, though, would be if you're doing B2B, that's why we elected to do it, because I have a more sophisticated franchisee that we're looking for, but at the same time, I have shared clientele and everything.
Yeah.
So it was almost a requirement on my side. However, if it's a residential business and you have a more sophisticated franchisee, I think it's better actually for them to handle that process, to have a more local touch in their market.
That's like in a regional or a master
right
that can manage their market and then have a number of franchisee units underneath them. The customer experience is absolutely pivotal. If you're looking for that owner-operator model, they're more likely to not want to deal with billing, collections.
They're closer to, honestly, what I use in my model. So we have an employee and a contractor model.
Yeah.
And they get to decide which route they're going to take.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to the franchisee whether they're going to use a contractor or an employee model when it comes to servicing the customer. But my contractors, I use both in my market depending on the service. And the contractor model is very similar to an owner-operator model franchise almost. It's not a franchise and they don't have, brand rights and, a franchise agreement. It's not a trademark agreement. It's a legit gig job, but that's very similar to the franchise, except it doesn't have the resell.
This is one of the concerns that I have in the franchising sector in general is the interpretation of a franchisee versus an employee.
Mm.
And the IFA has been pivotal in trying to prevent that determination.
We're waiting on Biden, from my understanding right now. I think that's where we're at with you're talking about the NLRB rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I've been really involved in that. I talk about it on a lot of the episodes. Went out and lobbied, did all that. By the way, don't peer behind that curtain. It's scary as shit in Capitol Hill.
One of my larger clients right now is already transitioning their franchisees into contractors. They're a master franchise type model, where they have a number of unit franchisees underneath them. And all of their new unit franchisees, California, Washington, D.C., they're no longer selling.
Oh, I'm not recommending any of them in some of those states like you're talking about. My first franchisees in California, I'm going to tell them you could do the contractor model technically. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. The lawyers are going to make a lot of money in it.
Yeah.
And, but
I've operated a contractor model business in Southern California. I've dealt with the labor board there, and I actually got invited on Judge Judy once. I got sued one time. I didn't go.
I was going to say
they would have got rewarded.
We'll have to cut
the
that
guy that was sued. No, leave it in there. I don't give a shit. I honestly, there was two reasons I didn't go. One, I'd probably yell at Judge Judy, and then two, I didn't feel it was fair to reward this guy for being an asshat.
Yeah.
So, because he would have gotten paid, and I knew he wanted to go on the show.
Yeah.
So I was, no, I'm not going to. And the image on the company.
I just hope it doesn't gain momentum in the interpretation because it could impact the industry and I
it's
don't
horrible for my model.
Yeah. Well, times 4.
Yeah. Oh, I did. Luckily, I'm small fry at the moment, so it's going to be a bigger issue when it gets bigger. So I'm literally just viewing it as I'll do what I can to help try and prevent it, and then I'll deal with it when it becomes a problem.
We are pretty much, I wouldn't say exclusively focused on field service. We started out more in the brick and mortar arena, but we don't really do much of that anymore because it's a completely different business model from where our expertise has evolved into. And most brick and mortar companies now are dependent on their point of sale. And that's where all their business intelligence comes from. We still do some royalty management components, some franchise or type stuff, but our entire focus is on field service. And that's what I really, not just because that's where our experience and expertise has evolved into, that's where I'm most passionate about the dynamics between the franchisor supporting the franchisee in their day-to-day operation, whether that's a master franchise model, a multi-unit, an individual owner-operator. They all have their own nuance. And
yeah, but that supports exactly what's messed up with the NLRB rule now.
Right. Well, you know why they're doing it, of course, right?
Well, of course I do. It's the labor unions. They want to be able to unionize at the OR level and go to one place instead of having to. The franchises don't qualify for them to come in and force a union.
That's right.
They generally don't have enough employees to meet the threshold.
Yeah.
And if they combine them and they make them all liable, now they can come in at the OR level and say, well, no, they're all your employees. So now we're going to unionize your entire system. And which again makes absolutely no sense because now who's negotiating with the union? I can't negotiate on behalf of the franchisee when it comes to the compensation for their employees.
And the chances are the franchisee has already left that realm, and that's the last thing they want to re-enter into.
Right.
But, it's always there's nothing static in the industry that we're in. And whether it's understanding the dynamics of one client versus another, or the politics around the industry in itself, or the economy and how that impacts, the performance, there's nothing static about it. And again, that's what I find. There's always something that you have to rise to deal with. That's the way my brain works, for better or worse, coming up with a solution that ultimately, works towards solving the problem, or if not part of the problem. But it's a great industry because you're always dealing with different flavors. It's a Baskin Robbins of business, and which was my first job, by the way.
What would you say is one of the differences operating a business? Sorry, I'm pulling us way a little off subject, but you're out of Canada. Mm-hmm. What are the pros and cons to operating in Canada versus the United States?
No difference.
No.
Every state, every municipality has its own regulations, certifications, but
what about taxes and everything towards a business owner?
again, there's no.
Is it a progressive tax system? I'm not that like, is it a
It
income
is.
tax?
We're all taxed differently, but we're all paying the consequence of paying taxes. There's no difference in Canada and the U.S. as far as an operating environment for business. They're very synonymous with each other, other than the nuances of local government. But I will say that not the legislation, but the legality of starting a franchise in the U.S. is more complicated, state by state. Still the same in Canada, but not nearly the regulatory requirements to franchise as it is in the U.S.
Okay.
So, I mean,
we're going to learn about that. Actually, that'll be one of my upcoming episodes. While I'm here, I have a Canadian lawyer coming on, so we're gonna actually talk about franchising in Canada and specific differences between the two.
I would say that it's probably easier to franchise in Canada, but I mean, we're a Canadian-based company, but 98% of my clients are in the U.S. because of the scale of the economy, the population.
Well, sure.
Right. So all of my experience is in the U.S. market, and, Canada just seems like a nice, simple place.
I watched a fun video that showed like the population in Canada, and it was some crazy percentage. It was like 90-something% of the population of Canada lives within like 50 miles of the U.S. border or something.
Oh,
like you guys have a massive country, but there's nothing beyond like the strip of the border.
Along the border. Yeah. I mean, 100 miles north of the border, there's not a lot going on.
Yeah.
There's small communities.
Might as well be Alaska, right?
Yeah. So it's the difference in franchising Canada and the U.S. is mostly just in the legalities surrounding it, is to my knowledge, but it's the scale of the economy. And I would hesitate, I'd say that, franchising, the model itself was invented in the U.S. and pioneered in the U.S. And in Canada, we just kind of sit back and watch it. And a lot of the franchise systems in Canada are, based in the U.S., just the organic growth. But other than that, we all have taxes that we have to pay.
I met a couple Canadian-based franchises. Wings Up was one. I tried to get him on the show. I don't think he was keen on public,
1-800-GOT-JUNK. Right.
Is that Canadian?
Based in Vancouver. That's where he started his business, in Vancouver.
And I know John Hewitt started Liberty Tax out of there, but that was because of his non-compete. It had nothing to do with Canada.
Yeah. We're a safe haven. We're a safe haven. What can I say? But there's a border between our two countries. But
I joked with you that one time. It was so Canada is very particular about driving offenses and things like that. And so I was concerned they wouldn't let me in because of a previous driving offense from years ago. And remember, you were like, "That's okay, man. We'll just go right to the neighborhood across and I'll just pick you up." Like,
just get close, close enough. There are subtle differences. There are many states in the U.S. that you can still ride a motorcycle without a helmet. You can't do that anywhere in Canada.
No?
No.
Yeah, the state I'm in, there's no helmet law.
Yeah. And, so there are subtle differences.
See, now we can get political a little bit.
Okay.
So helmet laws, seatbelt laws, like all these things under the guise of safety, I think they're so ridiculous. Like, yes, you should wear a helmet. Yes, you should wear a seatbelt. I completely agree with all that. But what I find ridiculous is that you're going to impose a fine on me like it's harming someone else. It's my risk.
Yeah.
I have, not to mention, look at the irony here. When you're talking about, all right, you're going to give me a ticket if I'm not wearing a helmet on a motorcycle, right? Okay, at least you can make the argument that that's for my safety, right? Now, explain this to me where you can give me a ticket in a car for not wearing a seatbelt, but I can ride a motorcycle with no seatbelt, right? It's not about safety. It's literally revenue generation. And
I guess.
And even if it is about safety.
Whose?
Yeah. I get to decide my own risks, right? Isn't that part of life?
There are and this is a separate podcast.
Yeah.
That we could go into.
I should start doing more of those. I'm telling you, they're going to be more popular when we start questioning.
There really is no difference in how we operate in Canada than you do in the US. That's the beauty of our two countries. There's a border, but it's really non-existent, and we think the same, we think differently, but functionally we're not really any different than each other. And our sense of entrepreneurship is identical.
Well, what was the difference? Canada was still controlled by Britain, right?
Yeah. Basically in France.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, the French province. Yeah. And again, I'm not that part of history.
That 45th, is it the 45th? I should know this, but, they drew a line at one point.
Yeah, and they were like, okay, well, you guys keep the U.S. and we get this up here.
There's a community not far from where I live in Vancouver that you have to go through Canada to get to it, which is in the U.S. Because when they drew the border, they forgot about this little toe of a piece of land. And the only way to get to this piece of land is literally going through.
You think they would just annex it or something,
well,
right?
Yeah, we're just saying, come and join us. Because we all love to go there and visit because, we get cheaper alcohol. Right. But yeah, there's very little difference in the operating climate between the two countries. And, I love the American dollar right now. It's like very strong compared to the Canadian dollar.
Right now.
But
all right, now we're definitely going to start going down rabbit holes.
Yeah. Well, that's the unknown, huh?
That'll be my Doom episode. You get me start talking about where the USD's headed.
Well, was it?
You can like it today, but let's see how you feel about it in 3-4 years.
Someone I can't remember.
Maybe
who it
even
was.
Shorter.
Jason, why don't we just print $32 billion in bills? Or trillion, sorry, not billion, trillion.
We don't use the B word anymore. There's no more billions in government. Everything has a T.
It's such a number that it has no
meaning.
It has no meaning.
Again, I love the video. Like if you go watch a video where they physically represent how much money that actually is. Like we're sitting in a building right now that's 12 stories or 13 stories tall or whatever. That amount of money would probably fill the entire volume of this building multiple times going northward, right?
Yeah. And those are $20 bills.
Yeah. It's an insane amount of money. And of course, that's going to impact shit.
Well, to your question about how do we differ, when the U.S. farts, we smell it.
Oh, sure.
Right, because there's no separation of impact. We don't impact the U.S. in any of our decisions, but the decisions that are made in the U.S.
You could. So, again, we're going down a way different rabbit hole than business, but Canada has a unique position to where they could ally with an adversary of the United States if they truly wanted to, opening up bases, but that would lead instantly to war.
Well, then, going down that rabbit hole, there's that little state north of us called Alaska.
Right.
That was a strategic border,
for sure.
Right. And you know what country is on the border?
Oh, sure.
Of that, right? I mean,
they have islands. There's an island here and an island here, right next to each other, where it's all the Russian Guard over here, and all the
they're
U.S.
literally
Guard.
waving at each other. Yeah. So you talk about what's going to happen in 5 years with AI. What's going to happen in 5 years in all the other stuff that's happening right now, and I can't go there honestly. I just, there's so much.
It's a lot of speculation and we don't know.
And a lot of stuff happening that we don't know. And, on the plane ride down here, the guy that's crawled into the middle seat beside was in the Air Force and dressed in his full.
It was Class A.
Yeah. And I don't know, I just had immediate respect for this person fulfilling that role. My father was in the U.S. Air Force, and I've always had a deep respect for people that serve in the military for whatever reason they find themselves. But it's a precarious world right now. And I don't know if it's just more precarious because of all of the coverage that we have. This is this is one of the, I come full circle where the information that we no longer, very few people hunt for information. The majority are fed information now,
110%.
right? And I don't,
They don't verify the information either.
and I don't know if they have, if it's laziness, if it's capacity, if it's skill set. I'm watching Succession right now, and it's a media empire,
Mhm.
and it's parallel to so much of the world today. But the way that the whole channeling of information for profit and ears and eyeballs is happening at a pace that, as a society, we're not able to truly measure it and interpret it, and we're becoming the equivalent of, sheep.
I'll give you some optimism, though, is there, at least for the time being, it's not all doom and gloom because most people aren't getting their information from those outlets any longer.
You see that changing?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You look at here, Tucker Carlson. Did you see the interview of Putin?
I haven't had to watch the interview because
You should watch the actual full interview. It was
Yeah.
actually pretty fascinating.
Mhm.
I watched the whole thing. I really enjoyed it. But the fact that had more viewership than quite literally every mainstream media channel combined and then some, right?
Mhm.
So I don't even remember. It was something like in the first 4 hours or something of it going live, it had like 500 million views or something, I don't know what it's up to today, but that gives me a little bit of hope in the sense that people are challenging regular mainstream media. An
Mhm.
individual like him could get fired from his position for essentially not going with the flow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And not towing the line when it comes to the mainstream media. He got let go and literally gave them the bird and just emerged now, taking his audience with him and everybody with him. And now he's unchained as far as the information that he can share.
Yeah. Whether you agree
Whether-
with him or
Doesn't
not,
matter. Yeah.
he's got a channel of his own that's not dependent on someone else telling him what to speak.
Yeah.
And you're right. That's a truism in how we have access now to, and
10 years ago, you couldn't do that.
no, you couldn't. There wasn't the infrastructure, first of all, to support it. We're all now looking for alternate sources of information. Not all of us, but people have access to alternate sources of information, which tends to polarize people too. They tend to navigate towards what they want to hear.
Sure.
And I watch.
Well, they all are in echo chambers to an extent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the algorithms are like TikTok's horrible for this. You end up in an echo chamber no matter what.
Yeah.
That echo chamber could be cooking recipes, but
So-
but you end up with whatever it decides you want to hear. You're just going to hear that over and over again.
Where does it emanate, and what is the value of conspiracy theories like Taylor Swift throwing the Super Bowl game and stuff like? I mean, stuff like that.
Flat Earth.
Like the noise is becoming louder,
Hmm.
and there are always a group of people that will navigate to one side versus the other, and they become louder.
Hmm.
It's interesting.
I think yeah. Honestly, though, it's a good thing. And here's
agree.
why I say that. It's a good thing because we don't have to like everything that's being said. The fact that we're hearing it is a positive thing. I mean, I think it's a positive thing for free speech. And I think it's good because it does create dialogue and open conversation. I wish people in general, the polarization between, politics and things like that would subside a little bit. I wish that they couldn't still, when I say they, the mainstream narrative still couldn't dump fuel on the fire as easily as they do. But I think it's getting better. And I think it's getting more difficult for them to do that. And
But it's dysfunctional right
Yeah.
now. The polarity is so extreme
Mhm.
that it's dysfunctional. And I think you're right. I think that having the availability of content of all different perspective is, again, exceeding our ability to process it, but we're coming around. to perhaps we will be able to see what's right or not right, what's real and fake, or interpretive. But it's this polarity that's killing.
So it gives me hope because if you look at numbers, again, I'm not an expert here, but if you look at the actual age groups that where they're getting their information from and like their viewpoints and stuff, when you start getting into the younger generation, they are actually looking for their own information.
Yes.
And they are digging in deeper. The ones that are towing the line are generally the older generations, right? And even my age group, I'm at top end millennial, Gen X, right? They're accustomed more to following the line and, listening to the main narrative and everything. The younger kids are literally just tuning it out completely. And they're like, no, I'm going to look at that. No, I did research. I know how to use Google. And they just look it up and they're like, wait, that doesn't make sense. And they actually understand how to dive into those bullshit articles that are written by, blank propaganda arm. And they'll go in and actually use the hyperlinks and be like, yeah, no, this is ridiculous.
They're learning.
Yeah.
They're learning. And
that gives me hope.
Yeah, I agree. My generation truly doesn't know how to process the plethora of information.
What's new?
It's just foreign to how we have traditionally been taught and received. And I think it's necessary for our society to be able to adapt through this information age, which is another, the information age was coined 40, 50 years ago.
I was going to say it's a long time.
Right? We're kind of going through a new wave. And we talked before we started how none of this is new. This is just a reiteration, but different. And we're just kind of observing it a little more collectively as a society because the information is, you don't have to read a paper to get the information anymore. You're inundated with it no matter where you go and what you pursue, you're being fed it. And so I think as a species, we're capable of adapting to this, but it's a necessity to go through this.
Again, I think ultimately it could lead to wonderful things.
Well, I hope so.
I try to stay positive. I have some doom and gloom point of views too. There's some, I'm not very optimistic on where the United States ends in the new world order. So I don't know how else to say it. That's how they're calling it, right?
Well,
but essentially, here I'll call it the reset, which they're also calling it, right? They're calling it these things for reasons, because they're not unique and they happen all the time. When I say all the time, relative to humanity, these things happen over and over and over again, and we're just nearing the end of one of those cycles. And what that means is the United States ends up in a different position in the near future. So we may or may not remain the central,
in our lifetime.
It's definitely within our lifetime.
The United States has only been the world leader for a very small period of time.
100 years.
So,
World War II. I mean, essentially
that was a turning point. Yeah. And there's no guarantee there's a continuation of that. But I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't think we will be a single dominant.
The United States isn't going away, and
no,
it's not. Again, when I say doom and gloom, it just means that
bring this back into franchise.
Right.
There has to be a workforce to support the economy, and my biggest fear is the economy being automated to the point where there is no workforce. What do you do about that? You're still going to have someone come to your house and fix your taps.
You and I have had that conversation.
Right? What's going to happen when something breaks and you need it fixed? Currently, that's still meaning someone is employed to go and fix it. But the auto industry, the large
restaurants,
that's going to go away too, though. The whole, a friend of mine that's opened a restaurant, the whole kitchen is automated, right? There's no staff in it, maybe one person type thing. There's no wait staff. You go up and you order it and you pick it up and bring it to your table. So the whole fabric of employment is diminishing.
Oh, personal engagement is going to be a luxury.
Yeah.
Literally, people, I see this clear as day. Like, you're going to talk about, like, when we talk restaurants, fine dining will still have wait staff.
Yes.
And they will still have wait staff because it's going to become a luxury
Mhm.
to have, and they're going to be awesome servers,
Yeah.
right? Like, because it's going to be highly competitive to
One
get
in
a
10.
job there.
1 in 10 will survive that
Yeah.
trend.
So, I mean,
So what are people going to do to earn a living?
that's the question of the day.
Your industry? Still people need to rent.
It's not just, it's all industry. You know, there's stuff. Here's the scariest part about that is who's going to answer that question? It's not the question itself that's the biggest problem. It's the fact that there's who's going to take ownership of that solution? Because it's sure as hell not the government.
No.
And I mean, there's options out there that are tossed around, which I don't like. You know, you got stuff like UBI, Universal Basic Income, and
I think you'll find a decline.
But those
in the birth
aren't
rate.
long-term solutions anyway.
You'll find a decline in the birth rate.
Yeah.
Which is just a natural tendency in any species.
Well, that's already happening. Nobody can afford children.
Yeah. So it's already happening. It's going to be interesting as things become where the manufacturing sector continues to leave North America.
What does that do to morale when you talk about birth rates declining? So that gives a lot of people purpose in life, right?
God forbid it ever doesn't.
Well, you see what I'm saying,
Yeah.
though. So birth rates go down. People are not having children.
People will.
What does
would
that
have
do to
3
the
to 4
moral
children.
fabric of society? Is, you know, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and kinship.
Family values
Family
and-
values, and the way that brothers and sisters fight and love each other at the same time, and now you only have 1 or 2 children.
And then throw on top of it that everybody's living in an AR headset, right?
Yeah.
It's literally like there are some dystopian points of view on this stuff.
Yeah. And I'm just an observer,
Same.
right? Because it's happening,
I control what's controllable.
and I control what's controllable. But
Yeah.
I think aloud as to the dynamics that are going to change no matter what we do. You know, we've lost our manufacturing sector. We're losing the employment base that was kind of left over from it, in part through automation.
Mhm.
The strength of our dollar is such that we can't compete. So these are dynamics that are going to greatly affect our society, and even more so, pulling this back into the business that we're in. Right, the opportunities that exist are going to change. You know, you cannot. You know, I would not want to open a brick and mortar store
No,
at this point. You know, I would not want to.
there might be some exceptions, but very few.
Very few. I mean, I wouldn't want to
Like a
build a tower
7-Eleven
for
might
office
not
space.
be bad.
Imagine building a tower for office space. Real
No.
estate gone. Right. There's a housing crisis. Sure.
What? See, and there's cool solutions there too, like in
Transition.
iService real estate. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and they're doing some stuff like that. If there's people converting old
Yeah.
schools into, you know,
So the cool thing
Yeah.
is, you know, what's the difference between Canada and the U.S.? There's no difference when it comes to entrepreneurs coming up with solutions. When you see a gap in the market, when you see an opportunity,
as long as there's still a market that is welcoming to them.
yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Again, you start switching things over to like UBI, and
That's
I don't know what
that's
happens to the motives behind those solutions. I'm not saying that's just one small
Well,
example.
that's
UBI, but-
that's kind of like the inevitable direction people migrate to. Is that, well, if there's no employment, then you have to somehow, you know, allow people to exist, which is a universal income concept. But that removes all of the incentive for entrepreneurs.
Well, entrepreneurs will still want more as long as they still have the incentive to get more. But the problem comes is they don't have the same access to a stable workforce. They don't like it removes the incentives for other people to support themselves instead of
to work hard.
being dependent on essentially the government.
So we talked about having good people around us, right, to be successful ourselves. And I know your staff and had the opportunity to meet them. And those are good people that believe in you, your vision. You take care of them for all of the right reasons. And you foster that kind of relationship with with those people. We lose that when we lose the purpose of a workforce.
Mhm.
Everything that we do is, designed not just to be successful and gain wealth and all of that stuff. It's the relationships that we have, at least in my opinion, in my existence, is having the people around you that
Purpose.
Yeah, that it's not rocket science,
Mm-mm.
right? It's all relationship management.
My managers don't manage because they enjoy teaching people how to clean apartments, even though they might, right?
Yeah.
They manage because they like coaching other people to better and grow and develop. And that's why I have such a great team, is because I don't have people that are robots that follow.
So that's that.
They like mentoring. They like teaching.
Yeah. So you need to make sure that your franchisees or master franchisees or whatever that entity is carries forward that concept, right? Because you're not just providing someone a job, you're providing them with a purpose so that they can carry on that vision, right? Because they have to have the same sense of hiring the right people. And that's a skill set that
Great. My managers need to teach them that, because I run my hires by them a lot of times.
Yeah. And so they need to.
They're better at screening them than I am.
Yeah. And so they need to replicate what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because when you grow, growth can seem to be stagnant when you're right in the middle of building everything. And with my business, I'm always hoping that it's going to suddenly explode. You need to be ready for that, right? Without injuring your core business. And so it's that's the kind of the.
I think it's inevitable, Jeff.
Yeah.
You're going to have an explosion. You can minimize damage, right? Let's look at it like from a military type perspective. Yeah. We can minimize the impact, so we can shield things as best we can, and put the plate under the Humvee. But when we hit the IED, or it's going to cause damage. It's going to mess things up. But as long as we survive, we'll be good.
Yeah, that's right. Cheers, brother.
Cheers. So, Jeff, I think we're going to wrap it up. This has been an awesome conversation, but I have meetings, you have meetings. We got to go see everybody else with the IFA.
And it's not like we're not going to see each other again. So thank you, Adam, for inviting me.
Well, I'm going to buy you a drink at the next stop. Are you kidding me?
Let's finish it. Let's wrap this up. No, thanks again. It's been great. I appreciate it and enjoyed the conversation.
It was a pleasure, man. And where can people find you with Water Street?
Oh, that part.
The web address?
Yeah, www.waterstreet.net. And you can always reach out to me directly at info@waterstreet.net.
Awesome. Cool, Jeff. It's been a pleasure, like always, and I look forward to having you on again, and we'll dive even more into the philosophical. We'll do another episode that talks more on the politics and philosophy stuff and all the stuff your son said not to talk about. So
yes, I'll put all that advice to heed. Thanks very much.
All right. Everybody else, we will see you on the next episode. I'm filming a whole bunch of these, so I don't know what order this one's going to release in, but I'm sure there's others. So if you want to hear more conversations like this, make sure to follow Distilled Wisdom on whatever platform or visit us at distilledwisdom.net. Thank you.
I'm Refreshman, and I'm here to empower you to take charge of your destiny. Are you tired of working for someone else? Do you dream of making a difference in your community and unleashing your full potential? Then look no further than Refresh Franchising. With us by your side, you can start your own heroic business venture with the unwavering support and cutting-edge resources you need to conquer your goals. Our franchise model is like a super serum that will give you the strength to succeed. Refresh provides extensive training, ongoing mentorship, and an established brand with a loyal customer base. Plus, you'll become part of a heroic league of entrepreneurs who serve as allies on your journey towards greatness. And the best part, you won't have to waste time building your business from scratch like some kind of neophyte. With Refresh Franchising, you'll hit the ground running at lightning speed and unlock the key to heroic financial success. So gather your courage, summon your inner superhero, and visit refreshfranchising.com to launch your heroic franchise journey. Always remember, together, we can achieve greatness.